Sounds like it could be grounds for more rejoicing. So I'd like to ask Leandra Bernstein to pose the next question.
Thank you. Now, this question comes out of some discussion with the policy committee members who, as we've said, have done incredible work over the course of this week and now into next week in the Washington, D.C. area. And it's been very incredible. We've had over 40 pre-scheduled meetings. I don't think we have a final count for the number of total interactions and impromptu meetings that we've conducted to continue to push for signers onto Glass-Steagall and the entire recovery program, which begins with the re-implementation of Glass-Steagall. Now, rather than talk about all of the successes that we've had, I would like to raise some of the resistance that we've run up against and that the policy committee has run up against in the course of organizing. Now, this comes in the form of certain lines against Glass-Steagall, which anyone watching the media this week has more than likely been exposed to. Some of these lines: Glass-Steagall would not have stopped the 2008 crisis. Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers had nothing to do with commercial banking. If we introduce Glass-Steagall, it will make U.S. banks less competitive. The new economy is too complex to go back to Glass-Steagall. Wall Street will lose money if Glass-Steagall is re-implemented. Dodd-Frank needs the chance to work, which you made reference to how Dodd-Frank would work. And then a new one, which is very interesting, is it will never pass this Congress. Wall Street will leverage massive amounts of money and pressure in order to stop it. Now, these are all flagrant lies. Mm-hmm. The last one is an open threat, but the rest are lies, and they originate from primarily a single source, J.P. Morgan, who still appears to be very sore about what Franklin Roosevelt did back in the 1930s. And this is the same J.P. Morgan led the shutdown of Glass-Steagall, the same J.P. Morgan who came out in their own name against our initiative in the Delaware State House for a non-binding resolution to have the Delaware congressional delegation support Glass-Steagall. Now, in the context of this mobilization, you announced two initiatives this week. The first, you pose the question of who owns members of Congress, in particular, members of Congress on the Financial Services Committee. And second, you announced that we need a new Pecora Commission. Now, on the first, who owns Congress, we've looked into how much is being received in campaign funds, and really what's reported by the FEC is only a shadow of what is actually going into these campaigns, what Wall Street is putting in. We've covered the revolving door policy in Congress, where members of Congress themselves, aides, chiefs of staff, move from Washington to Wall Street to Washington to Wall Street. One member of the policy committee noted that in some of these offices, you really get the sense that it isn't the congressman who's running the show. So we have that material coming together, and secondly, on the Pecora Commission, you have in the original form the realization that all three branches, the exposure that all three branches of the United States government were being controlled by something that Ferdinand Pecora noted was the Wall Street force, which was a rival to the power of government itself, and they had become so powerful. They had become so powerful, and they viewed themselves, and others viewed them, as the untouchables. It's interesting. J.P. Morgan Sr. Had a quote My special job is the most interesting I know of anywhere. More fun than being king, pope, or prime minister anywhere. No one can turn me out of it, and I don't have to make any compromises with principles. Now that ended with the Pecora Commission and the instatement and the initial passage of Glass-Steagall. And when J.P. Morgan Jr. was hauled off to prison and J.P. Morgan Sr. passed away, his death was blamed on the stress of the Pecora Commission. So, like you said, not a loss to anyone of any significance. So, right now we're pulling together who would be the target of a new Pecora Commission. The banks, the institutions that need to be investigated in order to get to the criminals who need to be held responsible, who need to once again populate the halls and the cells of Sing Sing. So the question is whether, or if you would please expand on those initiatives and how we take it into the coming weeks.
Okay. Well, sometimes it's hard to explain these things, but I think we can probably get by with that a little bit here. The point is, there is no possibility. First of all, in fact, there is no possibility that the bailout of Wall Street could succeed. The only objective that is involved is the following, as I said before, is to cause a defeat of Glass-Steagall. Number one, the defeat of Glass-Steagall means there is no legal means to defend the people of the United States against Wall Street. At that point, Wall Street and its equivalents in Europe would then simply do the obvious thing. Since they could never pay their present debts as the Wall Street and similar things, therefore the only thing that will happen is that Wall Street and company will default on their obligations. Now, their default on their obligations would mean the emptying of all banks. It would mean the condemnation of the majority of the population to starve to death. And that is no exaggeration. That's the exact situation. There is no way, when you take the magnitude of the debt which Wall Street and its transatlantic partners represent, they have no credit available to themselves, honestly. No credit on which to survive. The only thing they can do, because their debts are so enormous, unpayable debts are so enormous, they could never pay them off. Therefore, they simply, in order to maintain power, they get Glass-Steagall through, and then cancel the debts. You will not have them saying openly that they intend to cancel the debts until Glass-Steagall has been defeated. If Glass-Steagall is not defeated, they're finished. Now, what's the follow-on to that? Most people don't understand these things, but I think the coming 2 weeks, as I understand, is going to be the case. If we keep doing what we're doing, and other people join in doing what we're doing, I think we can win this fight. I think because of what we've seen as the non-linear curve upward of our efforts indicate that if we continue to go in this direction, Wall Street is finished. Wall Street will be dead. That will not be anything but a blessing. Because then what happens, we're going to go through another operation which is rarely understood. What is the implication of Glass-Steagall? What happens in a case like this with Glass-Steagall's response? The federal government goes back to the original Constitution of the United States, the federal Constitution, which is a credit system. And therefore, we will take the federal government will take the responsibility of creating a source of credit to promote further employment, and similar kinds of useful benefits to the American people. And that will work. Now, people will say that can't work. That will work. In fact, it's the only thing that will work. The world in large, the transatlantic region in particular, is already hopelessly bankrupt. All it's waiting for is the realization of that bankruptcy. All that's keeping this thing alive is postponement of reality. In the coming 2 weeks, that reality is going to be pressing on the situation. Now, what the difference is this. These guys from Wall Street, these clowns and thieves, what they do is they create an idea of a system, which is a credit system of their own type. They invent the whole credit and allot it to themselves. But with us, with the U.S. tradition of which is the Glass-Steagall tradition, then we have a credit system. We don't have these overhangs. We have a credit system. We put people to work on credit, and that will lead to the increase of productivity, which will ultimately pay for the credit. Our job is to get people back to work in real production, and as fast as we can do it, and to protect the health care and protect the other things of our citizens. And if we can do that, we can restore the confidence of our citizens in themselves. The problem today is the citizen has no confidence in himself. Look at what has happened to him. He doesn't have any real employment anymore. If he has employment, he can't feed his children and himself too. Everything that's there is being lost. They're stripped of the ability to produce. The food supply is all totally inadequate. The present population cannot live on the existing flow of food supplies under the present conditions. Glass-Steagall, we can do it. But then it's going to be a tough job. But we will do it because we have to. We have to defend our citizens. But we've come to the point that this is the answer. And what's gone on with the Bushes and other kinds of fellows, that thing is going to come to an end. With Prescott Bush on down. The guy who funded Hitler. And that Bush and his children. That crowd is out. But there will be a rejuvenation of the people from being saved from what they know is happening. People know, parents know, when they feed their children, they're not going to eat. And this is the pattern throughout the nation. We can turn that around. We still are far short of enough to feed our own people, our own nation. It's not being produced. And food that is essential to our people is being turned into gasoline for trucks and so forth. And this is the enemy we have to eradicate, this whole policy. And we're going to have to do it. If we don't, the horrors that will hit the whole U.S. population and European population as well is unthinkable. The idea that we do not get Glass-Steagall through is morally unthinkable. And anybody who's opposing Glass-Steagall, whether they know it or not, is actually perpetrating a crime against humanity.